Now, back in the old days, perfmon was the tool not only to do real-time monitoring of the different counters on a system, but also it was a tool that could be used in the background to monitor those counters and provide you with a log of the data. In recent OS versions, however, that functionality has been rolled into a new thing called data collector sets. And so in order to do things like schedule performance monitoring or configure alerts, you'll now do those not in perfmon, but instead in one of these data collector sets that you can create. Let me flip back over here to these data collector sets so we can take a look at essentially what they are. There is out of the box here one called Server Manager Performance Monitor, and down here under System there are two more called the System Diagnostics and then the System Performance Data Collector set. And one of the neat things about just these that are right out of the box is that if you run one and allow it to continue doing whatever it's doing, you'll notice here that we are now outputting in configuration information to these various locations here on this machine. These are in the perf logs folder on the root of C. Anytime you're running a data collector set, there is a process it will go through in order to gather whatever configuration information you're looking for, whatever performance information you're looking for, and you'll want to set start and stop conditions on how and when these data collector sets will go about gathering their information. We'll go through configuring one of these here in just a second. But before we do, I want to take a minute here and just kind of show you what the result of these different data collector sets can be. Let me come back over here to this System Diagnostics data collector set, and let's take a look at the data collector set that we just created here. If I right-click and choose to view the latest report, you can see here exactly the report that was created as the system went through gathering all the information here for our System Diagnostic data collector set. We're taking a look at some warnings here. We've got some basic system checks that were done. These were all passed, obviously, as you can see down here. We've got an overview of the resources. We can take a look at our software and hardware configuration. A lot of this information was gathered through WMI. We can see the various disk checks that were made and all the other things that make up this report that can be created on this system. Now again, this is out of the box, and so you got a lot of stuff here that's been done by Microsoft in order to give you this nice view. But as you can imagine, the running of this report is something that you could essentially send to yourself or take a look at on an every so often basis as a way to get a feel for what's going on this machine when you're not actively paying attention. Running the performance data collector set up here at the top can also give you a view for just how the system is performing. One of the basic tenets of performance monitoring in the Windows operating system, or really any OS, is in establishing a baseline that you can use to compare or contrast today's performance from that which you consider to be nominal. And so running these and getting a feel for the activities going on a system is something that can definitely help you out. Now, the hard part, however, with establishing that baseline and then looking at it every day is that not all of us have a single server that we have to take a look at. And in fact, not all of us can really parse all the information in this very detailed report to really get a feel for what that baseline should be. More often than not, what we're interested in are a few key counters that we need to pay attention to. And so for that reason, we can create our own user-defined data collector sets here as well. The creation of a new data collector set here gives us the ability to create one either from a template or one that is created manually. I'll show you kind of how both of these work. Skipping over the name here for just a second, I want to show you that the templates provide a system diagnostic, system performance, and then a WDAC diagnostic here as well, which in most circumstances you won't find yourself using all that often. Again, these basic templates here are designed to give you a starting point for creating your own custom data collector sets. However, I tend to find that the templates themselves are a bit confining, and so creating data collector sets can be better done by creating them manually. So let's call this, I don't know, our data collector set that we're creating. And in doing so, we're going to create a data collector set, at least in this case, that focuses specifically on performance counters. So we can choose the performance counters that we're looking for, and then add in the actual counters that we're interested in. Before we were taking a look at, I believe, memory counters. And so if we come back here under memory, if I scroll up here to the top, we can take a look at the same kinds of memory counters that we were looking at before in perfmon. So the cache bytes, I think, was one of the ones we were looking at. And down here, the page faults per second being another. So before we were looking at those in a more real-time view, what we're doing here is creating the ability for these counters to be continuously monitored or monitored every day over a particular period of the day, with the goal of storing that information in a log file for later review. I'll choose OK here to add the two counters in, and we'll set the sample interval here to just 15 seconds. Obviously, the lower the sample interval, the more data you're going to collect in order to collect the data that you're collecting. I'll choose Next again to move on to the next page, and we can see here where we would actually like the data to be saved. Once we do that, choose Next again, and then it's here where we can identify what user we want this data collector set to run as well as what we want to do with this data collector set now that we've created it. Let's go ahead and finish this so we can take a look at what we've created, and then right-click over here to take a look at some of the properties associated with this data collector set. For the purposes of the exam, and also just for your own administration, I would be familiar with what these data collector sets can do and the different configurations you can set.